Hi, everybody. In today's episode, we're going to get into what the testimony was on day 3, and we learned some very interesting details to the timeline and some personality issues with the victim, Katie. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am Rebecca. This is Crafting and Crime Daily, a show that I have designed where I recap live trials. I'm a former attorney and registered nurse and now retired, and I recap these so you have something to listen to while you're crafting. I love doing diamond painting, cross stitch, crochet, watercolor painting. This is one of my watercolor prints that was actually done as a diamond painting. So, what happened on day 3 of this trial? Only a half a day, only till 1 o'clock. We finally finished the testimony of Kurt Pfannenstiel. I learned how to pronounce it. Kurt Pfannenstiel, the guy who can remember absolutely nothing. He does not recall a thing. Now, granted, this happened 5 years ago, but some of these things you no doubt would remember. I would think that you would remember, but I'm getting the sense that he doesn't remember anything because he doesn't have any alcohol in his system. I don't know. I'm just saying. So apparently, May 15th, the day that Katie goes missing, and they find Harry in the hotel room, passed out drunk, unconscious drunk. They interview Kurt in his driveway. Now, they don't go into his house because it's COVID, so they just interview him in the driveway. And this is he actually told the police that the first he heard of any altercations between Katie and Harry, Ingolf Truek, he likes to be called Harry, was when she got a restraining order against him. I've wanted to know from the beginning, what is in this restraining order? What did she say that she was able to get this restraining order? And was it true? Was she making up stuff? Because we haven't heard of any domestic violence going on between these two. And nothing in these 5,000 text messages between Kurt and Katie, or the 10,000 pages of text messages between Katie and her bestie, we don't hear anything about domestic violence, just that she went in February and gets a restraining order and gets him thrown out of his house. But there's a little bit more to what she is doing that we're going to learn, that the jury is going to learn. So, of course, he doesn't remember his conversation with the detective in the driveway, or the police in the driveway, so his memory has to be refreshed. So then he talks about, he's asked by the defense attorney, you would have respect for a man's wife, right? You wouldn't ask to see her boobs, would you? He's like, sure, I would respect him. And no, I wouldn't ask to see her boobs. Well, of course, the prosecution jumps out, oh, objection, and they run up to the sidebar. So apparently there was a text where she says, I want to see, or where he says, I want to see your boobs. I don't know if she showed him. I suspect if she did, we would have known that. But he said no. But clearly there's a text where he did say that. But he doesn't recall that. I don't recall. Anyway, there's another text also where the prosecution jumps out of their chair, where he says, put on your best sexy outfit. You're bad and naughty. He doesn't remember this, but there's an objection sustained. So he's got no memory of talking to her or texting with her about this settlement that they were trying to get into before the reconciliation. First, they're trying to enter into some kind of settlement agreement, and he won't agree to it. And she's telling Kurt this in text messages, and he's texting her back, okay, I'll talk to him. He doesn't recall any of this. So the attorney shows him the text message. Does that refresh your memory? well, if you say so. And he's like, well, what were you going to talk to him about? I don't recall. Oh my God, this guy. There's a text message on May 6th. She was killed on May 14th or 15th. So the week before, she's texting him. He's texting her, meet me in the garage in 5. And she's like, I'm too good to you. Well, what do you recall going to the garage? No, no. Why would you go to the garage? And he's like, well, I think, she was giving me some food. Well, why was she giving you food? Well, I think it was around the holidays. He's like, May 6th, what holiday? And then he's like, well, she had dinner, people over for dinner, and she had leftovers. And then when the prosecution gets up, she's like, do you recall that being about cake? He don't remember any of it. So she dropped it. I don't know what that was all about. He denied having any feelings for Katie. They were just friends. Just friends with benefits, apparently, but just friends. But apparently he texts her at one time and he says, I think you and I are feeling the same thing. And he doesn't deny doing this text, but he doesn't remember why he said that, because we are just friends. Okay. But on prosecution gets on redirect, and I'm not sure it helps her case, but she wanted to stay in that house. And she tells Kurt this in a text message. She wanted to stay in that house because her kids were in the Dover school system. And she had a child with special needs. And she wanted those kids in that school system. Interesting. Then on recross, he gets out that she didn't need that house. It wasn't like she didn't have anywhere to go. She had a house her family had a house or a condo in Belmont that was empty. She could have gone there. Yeah. So she had a place that she could have gone. She just wanted those kids in that school. This had nothing to do with loving Harry. She wanted her kids in the Dover school system. Anyway, he finally gets off the stand. Thank you. Officer Ellis is the next person on the stand. He is a patrol officer with the Denham Police Department. On May 15th, he is dispatched over to the Residence Inn. This is the hotel where they find Harry. He was asked to do a well-being check of Katie. So when he arrives at about 10:45 that morning, he first meets with the hotel clerk. He is directed to Harry's hotel room by the clerk. The clerk, first he knocks and announces, Denham Police Department, are you in there? Hello? No answer. So the clerk uses the key card, lets him in. When he opens the door, he sees that there is a male passed out on the bed wearing a t-shirt and jeans. And so then he enters the room, finds that Harry is unresponsive, calls for an ambulance. While he's waiting for the ambulance, he's looking around the room, for Katie, making sure that she's not in the bathroom. She's not there. She's not in this room. So the rescue comes and they give him a dose of Narcan because it's just routine. If you've got somebody that's unconscious, you give them Narcan. That way, if they've had any opioids in their system, fentanyl, oxycodone, whatever, they can reverse that and they will regain consciousness. Well, they give him the Narcan. It don't work because he's under the effects of alcohol, no drugs. This officer described that he had cuts, superficial cuts on his arms and legs. They looked under the jeans. Maybe they took them off when the ambulance came. I don't recall. But there was a small table in the room that had, and I'm going to show you a picture of this, a whiskey bottle on it. There was and I think near the picture, let me look at the pictures here. Hold on. This officer took pictures. You'll see an aspirin bottle next to the whiskey bottle, and there's a bottle of water. Then he took a picture of the bed, which is kind of, it looks like somebody's been in the bed. Then he takes a picture of that same table. There's a bloody knife there and pills laid out on the counter. And he says that's because when the ambulance or the medics were there, it was a bottle of aspirin, and they poured some of the aspirin out onto that table just to make sure it was aspirin. So that's why you see pills laying out there. Then after they took him away, he took pictures of the two vehicles. So you see both of these vehicles, and the defense wants everybody to know this, belong to Harry. But there was a Jeep there, which they say she drove, and some of the officers actually refer to that being her Jeep. In that Jeep was an empty bottle of beer or some kind of alcohol. And then there's a Mercedes, nice SUV, Mercedes SUV, which at some point in the testimony we've learned he was continuing to pay for these expensive vehicles, even though he didn't have access to them after she had him kicked out in February. She had both those vehicles because she's got to get her kids to the school in the Dover school system. I'm sorry, I'm being a little facetious. Anyway, so what else? Okay, while he's leaving, he's approached by a male, which is Stephen Rocco, the father of their three kids, him and Katie's three kids. He's the one that asked the police to do the welfare check. And then they have a conversation. He doesn't say what it is because, it's hearsay, and Stephen Rocco is actually the next person on the stand. So then he returned later. He leaves, and then this officer returns later after they get a search warrant for the hotel, and he assists with canine searching for her. So they search the hotel room. They search the perimeter and things with the canine to see if they can pick up anything of Katie. And then he gets a note. He finds out that her cell phone is pinging in the town of Medford. So this officer notifies the Medford police and asks if they can go out and start looking for this cell phone, doing a search for this woman. So the next person on the stand is Stephen Rocco, the father of her three children, Katie's three children. They met in high school. Now, Stephen is a carpenter, hard worker, carpenter. They've got the three kids. Right now, there's Sophia, who is 23 years old right now, Mary Grace, who right now is 22 years old, and Sam, who is 18 years old. So Sam now lives with his father. They have been divorced since 2017. Now, this timeline gets crazier and crazier. He didn't say what month in 2017, but okay, anytime in 2017, even if you assume that it was January, she meets Harry in November of 2018. So that's roughly a 2-year period of time. In that period of time, and this is assuming that they're divorced early in 2017. I don't know when it was in 2017. It could have been as little as a year period of time. So from a 1 to 2 year period of time, she meets and marries a guy named Chris Foley and divorces a guy named Chris Foley. But this Stephen says he's never met Chris Foley, even though they were married. He never met the guy. And there's been no details of this marriage whatsoever. Like, what happened? What'd you get out of it? That's what I want to know. Anyway, apparently not a house in the Dover school system. So he said they would communicate on a daily basis via text. So he did get an email. She sent him an email that Harry had sent to her for him to read, where Harry was expressing that he wanted to reconcile. And this email was sent in April of 2020. And he said that she was agreeing to the reconciliation because she wanted the kids to have a stable place to live. Again, it's all about the kids. So on the day of May 15th, he received a call from a friend, which we now know was Katie's best friend. She gets his name from the son when she goes to the house to check on the kids. She sees the son, Sam, in the kitchen, who at that time is like 12, 13 years old. She sees him and she gets the father's phone number. So she calls him. So he gets that call. Once that phone call's over, during that phone call, she gave him where the hotel was, where she had seen the vehicles. He calls Katie. He does not get an answer. Then he calls the kids. Then he calls the hotel. Then he proceeds to go over to the hotel. By then, he calls the police too to do a welfare check. But then they, or maybe the hotel called to do the welfare check. I don't know which one called. But anyway, he goes to the hotel, and as he's arriving, they are taking Harry away in the ambulance. So he stays there and talks to the police personnel. Afterwards, he goes back to the home where the kids are staying to check on the kids. And they were in their upstairs rooms. And when he gets there, he goes in and he sees these black dots on the wood floor. And we see pictures of them. And I don't know what the relevance of these are. I don't know what blood looks like on a wood floor. But there's these little black dots. And he says that's what he saw. So when the cross-examination happened, the defense attorney says, well, you weren't very involved in the kids' lives, were you? And he's like, yeah, I saw them every week. And you paid child support. Well, you weren't there when she had to go, when the one that needed special needs had his IEP. That was Harry. Well, that was an objection, and it was sustained. Well, you didn't teach the daughter how to drive. Another objection. That was sustained. So apparently Harry was involved with these children. So what we find out because the jury's asked to leave so we can hear these objections. So apparently what was going on, and this was where the defense attorney was going with this, because he wanted to talk to Mr. Roca about all the times police were called on him. And that's what prompted all these objections. So, and this huge sidebar and the jury being excused. So what we find out is that apparently there were multiple times where the police were called by Katie on Stephen for things that weren't really happening. Like, oh, he's stalking me. Every time he would come into the neighborhood, she'd call the police for something. Apparently false reports, like things that weren't actually happening. Yeah. So, claiming that there was a history of domestic violence with Mr. Stephen Roca, which I don't know if there really was or wasn't, but this would be what Katie would tell the police. And one of the things he was trying to elicit in front of the jury was that Roca was upset because she was having this Chris Foley guy stay at the house that she was living in with Harry. Once Harry moved out, she's got Chris Foley coming in with her. The second husband. What? Jury doesn't know this. Doesn't know about the police. Doesn't know. They do know that there's multiple police reports because he asked the question. But they don't know what the police reports are about or any of that. But this woman, to me, is clearly setting these guys up. You know, and I'd love to know what was going on between her and this second husband. Interesting. And the first husband, Stephen Roca, we never really got into why they divorced and what went on there. So, all right, detective. There's a detective on the stand next from the Denham Police Department. She responded to the residents on May 15th. She arrived about 10:44. The ambulance was just leaving when she gets there, and she proceeded into the room and processed it as a crime scene. And there are photographs. I've already talked about the photographs. One was the kitchen knife. I told you about there was a phone on the dresser. She sees the phone. That was his phone. She later took it to the hospital where he was at. She photographed the bed, the liquor bottle. The liquor bottle was only half empty. Or we could say it was only half of it was left. What's that whole the glass is half full thing? Whatever. Anyway, and she photographed the cars. I already showed you that. So she goes to the hospital and she's not allowed to talk to him. He's still unconscious. He doesn't regain consciousness until 5 a.m. the next day. That's a long time to be unconscious. Anyway, but through her, the defense attorney gets out that the doctor suspected that he had overdosed on alcohol. You know, isn't that what they told you? That's why he couldn't talk, because they suspect. Well, she doesn't know. I don't know what they were suspecting. So they returned the next day when they learned he had regained consciousness, because they wanted to interview him. And it wasn't until they don't get to talk to him until like they get there about 10. They don't get to talk to him until after 5 p.m. because it's during COVID and they have to go through a lot of hoops to get to talk to him, apparently. So they meet with him in the family room and there's an interview. And I thought, oh, good, we're going to hear the interview. We didn't get to hear the interview yet. We haven't been shown this interview yet. So, and that was basically her testimony, and he's not interviewed until the 16th. Then we hear from a Medford Police Department person who was asked to look in the location where Katie's cell phone was pinging. Remember, the earlier officer called Medford and asked them to look for her in that location. So he does that. Eventually, he's directed back to her home because the phone is pinging there. And he enters the home with some other officers. Now, this is after the officer that had gone to the hotel goes back to the home looking to check on the kids. The kids direct him upstairs because the door to the master bedroom is locked. They break into that door. They splinter the door. They go in. She's not there. Well, they leave because the only reason that they're there is to see if she's there, and they don't have a search warrant to search it. So they leave. So this officer didn't know that any other police officers had already been there. He sees that splintered door and he's thinking it looks like someone forcibly entered that room. And he's thinking, well, maybe this woman's in there, maybe the phone's in there. So he goes in, there's broken glass on the floor. He says, it looks like there was a struggle. She's not there, but they find her phone in her purse. Now, that other officer had said that they had the dispatcher call the phone, but apparently he didn't hear it. Maybe she had it on silent. I don't know. But when they pinged the phone, they found it in her purse in that room. So really, really interesting. So there was a broken glass, and someone during that entry picked up that glass and put it onto the dresser, but it was a shattered drinking glass, is what he said. Really, really interesting. And then there was another officer that testified that he participated in the search of the home and found clumps of hair on the stairwell. Well, the cross-examining, the defense got him to admit that they had a Labrador. Could that be hair from a Labrador? And he goes, I don't know. Labradors shed, don't they? They have a lot of shed. Could be. We don't know. So that's where the testimony ended for the day. Very, very interesting day in court. This woman is not looking like a very nice woman. And the prosecution knows this, and they're trying to keep it from the jury. That's what I'm thinking. They really are. But the defense is doing a great job of getting that information out in front of the jury. So let me know what you think of all that in the comments. If you're new, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. Take care, everybody. Bye.